What if the real catalyst for change in people's lives isn't a force, it's not control or volume, but a well-timed nudge? Not a shove, not a scream, and definitely not a nag. Just a subtle, intentional thrust forward, sideways, or even inward that disrupts inertia and invites growth. In a world hooked on pushing harder, being louder, being faster, maybe it's the purposeful and persistent nudge that actually creates the deepest shifts within us and others. Now, here's the tension. Nagging can get people to get shit done, but it is incessant and annoying, and it demeans and demands along the way. But nudging is different. It's transformationally different, actually. Nudging influences and inspires. Nagging drains my energy. Nudging creates it. One uses guile and guilt, the other activates a generous kind of gritty grace. And yet we often confuse the two of these, nagging and nudging, at home, at work, in leadership, or in relationships. The challenge isn't just knowing when we shouldn't nag or why we shouldn't nag, but how and when to nudge. And trusting that the smallest push or prod at the right place, in the right time, in the right direction, will move others toward their predetermined and possibly even predestined future. Hey, my friends, welcome back to the UNCOMMODiFiED Podcast. I'm Tim Windsor, and today my guest on the show is Susie Moon. Susie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. It's so great to be here. I'm
Oh,
excited.
we're gonna have a lot of fun. Now, a bit about Susie. Susie is a high energy connector. She's a promoter and an event filler-upper. This is my way of describing Susie. She's an event filler-upper with over 3 decades of experience helping entrepreneurs get seen, heard, and hired. She's all about real connections, energized experiences, and absolutely no BS, no fluff. Equal parts humor, hustle, and heart. Susie's the ultimate mother nudger, which is why we're going to be talking about this idea today. And of course, every great conversation is nudged or started with a drink for me. So, Susie, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking a cider of some sort that was in my fridge. I have a koozie.
Koozie?
Little advertisement, but yes, it's a pear flavored. So it's a loon juice.
Oh, a loon juice. Okay, well, that's
Loon.
be
Yeah.
appropriate. A loon juice for Susie Moon. I like that. We got things going on. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend I'm sophisticated tonight. So what I'm doing is I'm drinking a 10-year-old Taylor Flaggate port. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that I'm sophisticated. It's like the tale of two people. I'll pretend I'm sophisticated while you have your koozie. I think this will work out fine. Cheers to you, Susie.
Cheers.
By the way, I do like port. All right, so if you haven't figured it out already, audience, my listeners, my friends, we're talking about nudging, the nudger, being a nudger. And Susie is this self-described mother nudger. So, Susie, let's figure this out here. Here's a question. So, a mother, a nudger, a mother nudger. I got a question. How did this calling find you, and how did you discover it was your gift and potentially a gift to others? How does this find its way, and where do you find this term, Susie? Because I love it.
Well, I created the term because the word nudger, when I searched for it, I was thinking of buying the domain name, nudger.com,
Yeah.
because all of my clients kept saying, oh, you nudge me. You're such a good nudger. And I thought, oh, what a great name. So I go on to Urban Dictionary, and the term means erection. So
Oh,
I'm like, okay, I'm not going to use that. So, and then we came up with, oh, what about a mother nudger? And that's how it just stuck after that. So.
that's amazing. Now, by the way, good call not to get that URL, because that would have led to a strange sort of client array, I'm sure. But I just love this idea. And when we first connected and I started thinking about this, I really was fascinated, because this idea of nudging, when you start to really think about it and what it can do for people and what it really is, I think it's so powerful, because as soon as I thought about it, I thought, well, the contrary, the opposite is being a nagger, a mother nagger. And a mother nagger, that's just not a good thing. I don't care if it's in your family or in business. That's a bad, bad thing. So how do you balance the tension between nudging and nagging? Because I know they're different, but I don't know about you, but sometimes I might mistake one for the other.
Absolutely. I think they go very closely together. But I think that nudging is more of a form of love
Uh,
and really caring. So there's that piece where you want the best thing for the person. It's not about you, it's about what they can do with their lives and pushing them and convincing, hey, what's next? What are you thinking about? And how just like gently reminding them, hey, did you remember to follow up with so and so after you talked to them last time? So it's really just pushing them gently. It's like those Facebook pokes that used to be out there.
yeah.
Just gently, pushing them in the right direction without being naggy.
Yeah, so it's a balance. So how did you find? So this is your business. This is how
Mhm.
you make a living now. You're a mother nudger, and people pay you to nudge them, which is kind of cool. So how do you find yourself in this journey? I mean, tell us a little bit about your background. I
Sure.
imagine you didn't graduate from the school of nudging. I don't think there's like a degree in nudging.
Yeah, I hope not.
I don't.
Um,
Well, I mean, what it might be after this. We could start a school, the
oh,
Nudger
you're
School. Think
right.
about it. Yeah,
You're
be
right.
careful.
And I think it comes with accountability. I think a lot of people associate nudging with having somebody that can hold you accountable.
Yeah.
But to go back to your original question, is I started out in corporate, 25 years of being in corporate, having to dress up every day, not being able to swear, not being able to tell dirty jokes. I didn't fit in. I was like, I was the black sheep of corporate. I was always afraid I was going to say something wrong and HR would pull me in again. I've had supervisors and bosses that have said, you need to change your outfit. It's not appropriate. So I just never fit in. So, and I grew up with two entrepreneurial parents that had a business. I know I didn't want to be in the family business at the time. So I finally decided to go into my own business after just having it to hear with all of the corporate BS and the terminology. And I just couldn't handle it anymore. I'm such a rebel. And I wasn't really tapping into my true self when I was in there. I was just playing it safe, to be honest. So,
Well, and that's part of why I'm attracted to your story because, for me, this idea of uncommodification is this idea of, finding our unique expression of who we are. I mean, obviously, there's a caveat there for the positive benefit of ourselves and others. We have to be obviously a little bit careful with that. But, sometimes I do think that we find that we just don't fit in environments, and I think the challenge is we often say, "Oh, well, I need to fit in, so I'm gonna make myself something I'm not for the sake of the business I want to be in or the money I want to make." And I think that's a significant sellout that ultimately most of us regret at some level. So I really love the fact that you say, this is just not for me. I got to find a different way. So when you start sort of crossing over into this new world and you're going to follow in the spirit of entrepreneurialism that's in your family, but doing it a different way, what's the first iteration of your business? How does it get started and what are you doing in those early days?
yeah, I've really started to be a virtual assistant. I knew what I was doing in corporate. I was supporting sales teams. I was helping plan events and getting people to come to their sales pitches, basically, and also working on their CRM systems and also figuring out like what leads can we uncover? Who haven't you followed up with? So I was kind of doing the same thing that I'm doing now in corporate, but I didn't have the confidence that I could do it the same way in my own business. So I started as a basic, virtual assistant that helps with anything a small business owner would need. And I even ran the idea by a couple relatives and, a little old school in the approach when I asked them, like, what do you think about this? This is what I want to do. They thought I was crazy. They really had no concept of that there was a virtual option to support people. And at that time, it really wasn't very common until 2020, but it had existed forever, which is crazy. And so I started small. I knew I was good with technology and CRM systems, and I kind of supported people that way. And then I morphed. I went all over the place, like pivoting, oh, maybe I don't like this, and maybe I do like this, and doing so. I've gone in so many different directions, but I finally feel like I'm being true to myself rather than listening to what everybody else thinks I should do.
I love that journey, and I think this is also interesting because I think a lot of people sort of, well, we all do it in our mind. We're here and we want to go somewhere else, and we draw a straight line. From here to there is a straight line. It's always straight in our mind. Of course, in the real world, it's never straight. But I love the fact that you sort of wander into this. You're exploring. You're sort of bumping up against things. Sort of like those plinko games, trying to find where it is that you want to be. You move in this direction, it doesn't fit you. You move in another direction, which I think is important because for entrepreneurs who are trying to find out where they fit, I think a lot of people are afraid of that journey and afraid of the question. So what do you do? Well, I'm not sure yet. I'm figuring it out. And I love the fact that you embraced that sort of fluidity of the journey. And now you're sort of settling in and saying, this is who I am. This is who I want to be. And of course, now you're attracting a group of clients to that services that you want to offer, the things that you want to do. But I know also that a part of a passion for you or something that you're good at is you have mad skills when it comes to writing, but I think you also have gotten a little bit into the comedy world somehow in the midst of this. So explain how this all fits into it, Susie.
I always knew I had a good sense of humor, but I never wanted to be in front of people telling jokes. I never wanted that type of thing. But I kept having people reach out to me during COVID 2020 saying, Susie, why don't you do like a skit online? You can invite whoever you want and just do tell some jokes and tell us a story or whatever. And I finally did that December 31st of 2020. I did it. I made it happen. I worked with my cousin who was a writer on some comedy shows in LA, and she really helped me like hone in like how I wanted to do this. And it went awesome. I loved it. I could wear PJ pants, I could have a drink, and I could just kind of talk to the screen and present, which was awesome. I didn't really need the feedback, but it gave me that itch of I have something to say. People want to hear my comedy. They want to hear my jokes. And so it built up from there. Then somebody else said, Susie, come into our networking event and be the opening comedy person, tell us a story. And I did that and I actually got paid. That was my first paid gig. And it just kind of trickled on from there. So I've done some longer skits. I've never done a 3-minute or 5-minute stand-up thing. So that's on my bucket list because I would like to experience that. But it's always been a longer form, which is crazy. And I'm not done yet either. That's the exciting part.
I like it. So listen, you're on this journey, and obviously you're figuring out how you can commercialize and make a business out of this, and I like that part of it. But I'm always interested in what are people learning about themselves along the way. So Susie's on this journey trying to figure out, who she wants to be in this next iteration of Susie, which is less bound up, a more unfettered version of Susie Moon. So, what are you learning about yourself that you don't think you would have been able to learn if you stayed in the lane that you were in?
I was always playing it safe. I was second guessing my self-worth. I was always I was a people pleaser, like making sure that I was doing the right thing and following the rules and all of that. And that just wasn't me. I didn't feel comfortable that way. And so I'm finally embracing the gift that I was given and using it and not caring what other people think of me or who am I going to offend by doing this? My mom passed away in 2019 and she would have, the jokes I tell now, she would have been horrified by it. And my dad he's better, but I still feel like I'm holding back while he's alive. So there's this piece of like, I see myself down the road. Maybe I will do stand up because I can just let it all out and I'm not going to offend my dad or, you still worry
Sure you do.
about that.
I love again that what I love about it is there's still this sort of, I'm trying to figure it out and honor where I've come from, move into the future, which is a hard balance, by the way, I think, because it's not when you embrace yourself and I think embrace your future, it isn't about dishonoring the past. It is about somehow honoring the past because the past is what's brought you to this moment in time. And so that sort of brings me back in the conversation to this idea of nudging. So you've talked about the fact that several times that COVID was an impetus for you of certain things. And of course, COVID was a strange time for lots of people. Of course, some people who listen to the podcast maybe don't even think COVID existed. Whatever, whatever you think, that's okay out there, listeners. You do you. That's fine. But so let me ask you: do you think in some ways that metaphorically that COVID becomes a nudger for you?
Absolutely. It was definitely a catalyst. I could kind of retreat from having to be out in front of everybody too, so I could really work on myself. I've spent a lot of time alone building this business, and even though I'm networking with people online and going to various events, I'm still here at home with my dog in my PJ pants most of the time. But it's okay, and being okay with just being me is so powerful, and I never thought I would feel comfortable in that space and needing other people's approval. So it's lovely, in fact.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's interesting because COVID was a nudger to me as well. I mean, my podcast started in June of 2020. If it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have started podcasting. I mean, in 2019, I traveled 156 days for work. And so the idea of podcasting and trying to figure out how I was going to do that while I was doing that was craziness. And so then, of course, COVID happened. And now we're in a different day. I went from traveling 156 days to in 2020, I had a 26 step journey from my podcast studio, my bedroom, and where I relieved myself. So all of a sudden, my world became very different. And frankly, it tethered me down to a space, and I'm a person who doesn't like to sit around and just twiddle my thumbs. So all of a sudden, it was like I had this idea, and somebody had encouraged me about doing a podcast. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, and I don't have time. All of a sudden, I had time. I had a lot of time on my hands. And that's when I actually began to explore this world. So COVID became a bit of a nudger for me. And I do think that sometimes events that we look back in the midst of it, it's very difficult, of course. But when you look back, sometimes events become catalysts. To your point, they become nudgers, and often I would suggest that it isn't pleasure or good times that nudge us towards something different. It's often pain, discomfort, and when things aren't going well. Would you agree with that?
I would. I've always thought I've always had to pivot because there was a pain. It was the catalyst. It was the nudging action that made me move on. If things are going well, why would you change?
Correct.
So it's whether it's going through a divorce or being in a bad job that you were in, everything kind of pointed me in the right direction. So closing that door always opened up something better. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting how problems and pain can become a provocateur. Maybe again, sometimes to move us into where we need to be, because when we're in comfort, it's not, we settle in, we settle for second best, we do all these things. And what I think about is interesting. C.S. Lewis, the famous writer C.S. Lewis, he was a very religious man, and so he saw these in religious connotations. But I find it interesting because he wrote a book called The Problem of Pain. And he had a very, his wife was very sickly. He was part of the Inkling group, as part of J.R. Tolkien, all of these great fantasy writers, all these things. Of course, C.S. Lewis is famous for writing, The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, all this. But he wrote a series of other books because he was a theologian, and he explored these grand ideas about how the universe worked and how God worked in the way he described God. And he said something very interesting in this context. And again, people, if you're religious in nature, you can take it in that way. If you're not, you take it in a different way. It doesn't matter. But he said something fascinating that I often think about. He said, he said, in pleasure, he said, God whispers, but in pain, he shouts. And I find it fascinating because whether you can put whatever you want in there, you can put God, universe, you can put your mother, dad, you can put whatever you want in there. But in pleasure is this whisper to us. But pain is a shout. It gets our attention. And when we have personal pain, when we have organizational pain, when we have corporate pain, when we have societal pain, like we did in COVID, it's amazing how it becomes this provocateur to us, and it becomes this sort of this goad that says, hey, if you're not doing the thing, you shit, you could die tomorrow. If you're not doing the thing, then you got a problem. And
Yeah.
that's, I guess, for me, I described it a number of years ago on a podcast I did, and it was basically about the fact that I discovered the gift, not the grief inside of COVID. And I think this is obviously something you did as
Yeah.
well.
Exactly. And I like to think of the pain on Thanksgiving after, the pain in your waistline where it just gets so tight. You're like, I'm never doing that again. And, we go on a diet the day after and all of those things. And then what do we do the next year? Same thing. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. So I want you to think about the current people that you work with, the clients that you work with. And of course, you don't need to disclose who they are, but I'm interested to know, do you see a commonality of where they need to be nudged, like a common area where people just need a little bit of a gentle sort of, hey, let me nudge you in this way? Because do you see a common thread in that, in the
Yeah.
work that you do and the people you connect with?
Definitely, I think following up for any business owner can be hard. So you build a relationship, and I think nurturing those relationships is one of the hardest things that you can do.
Yeah.
So bringing the people and having a system top of mind to get those people circulating back without having to be spend all your days on social media. I think the people that I work with don't want to be on social media. They don't have time. Their goal is to just simply show up and speak or talk to their clients and work with them and create impact. And so for them to have to spend time to, nurture those relationships, that's one of the hardest things I think they make time for. So, that's where we come in and say, hey, did you follow up with so and so? Have you talked to this person? Oh, thank you for the reminder. They're so grateful that we have their back, and we're looking out for them because we want them to have success. We want them to make more money and have an impact, and we're right there with them. So
So that's the common sort of
yeah,
nudging point that you find.
definitely.
I'm assuming based on how you're describing this, and I could be totally wrong, and I'm happy for you to tell me I'm wrong. It won't be the first time. I'm assuming you're working with more sort of smaller business or independent type of sort of situations. Am I getting that correct?
Absolutely. It's the people who are coaching, they're consulting, service-based business owners. They're typically visionaries. They love to have events and bring people to them, but they want to make that impact. They want to grow their business, and they don't have the time and energy to spend networking and like going out and seeking the people to bring into uh, their sphere, I guess. And so, helping them do that, it's so much fun. I just love it. I get all
And
giddy.
it's great to do what you love to do. And so let me ask you about the wrestling for this group of people with self-promotion. So
Mm,
one of the things I will say I struggle with, as I'm probably, who knows, I might become your client, Susie. Maybe I'm a good candidate to be a client. I mean, so I'm probably in that sort of ilk of the clients that you probably deal with. Now, you probably deal with much nicer and more successful people than me, but you deal with sort of people maybe similarly. I will say one of the challenges for me was this idea of promoting myself. I don't, I have to admit, I'm not that into me. Okay. Let me just put it like, if seriously, if I had to date me, I wouldn't date me. Okay. I would not date me because I'm not that into me. It's weird when you're out there and I'm supposed to promote myself, but that feels weird. Is that another area where you sort of help people figure that out and nudge a person towards where they need to be? Because I'm going to tell you right now, that is a weird thing for me. Like, the
yeah,
last thing I want to do is sort of like, hey, by the way, here I am, look at me. That just doesn't do it for me. So
sure.
help me understand. Am I just psychotic, or is there
No.
something going on here, Susie?
I think that's very normal, but what if it's not about you? What if you are the answer to someone else's problem that they don't know it's you? So how are they going to find you? So maybe putting it on them and how can I be of service in a like reframe it in a different way when you're connecting with people? You're not promoting, you're educating, you're edutaining, they call it. However you work best with the person, sharing the impact and the talent that you have. I don't see it as bragging or promoting. It's sharing. It's you're having a conversation with people. And I think you're by holding it back, it's a disservice to the people that need what you offer.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think I would have looked at it that way. And I hate to say is you're probably not the first person who have told me, Tim, it's not about you. You know what? That's not the first time I've heard that advice, Susie. So I'm getting to hear a message here. So, okay, I got a question about this. So let's talk about Susie now. Forget your clients. Just to go back to Susie here. So what is the universe nudging Susie towards? And
Oh,
who's your nudger?
yeah.
And what's the universe, however you want to describe that? What's the universe nudging you towards personally, professionally? Where do you feel that nudge and you're going, man, I don't know if I want to go in that direction, but I'm feeling this thing that maybe I need to respond to.
I've been playing small my whole life, and I know that I can make a bigger impact to the world. And I don't really know in what way yet, but I feel like there's something there that I need to share. And I can tell you in a little bit about my comedy writing too, because that's a different area. But for me, it's stepping in front of people and not hiding behind a screen and
Mm.
just playing small. I surround myself with people that are smarter, that are motivated, and I inspire to be them. Like I want to ride on this train that we're going. And what else is possible? We have one life to live. So why are we not just trying hard things? I don't understand how anybody could or would want to have a same job and same routine in a factory. I can't. I know it's not for me, but maybe that's because I see bigger things for myself than I ever thought before. It's more travel, more fun. I've been doing the TikTok shop a little bit too much lately, and I've had some fun things. I even bought my like a squirrel puppet, like for the hand for my dog. What? But you gotta make things fun. So I just think life's too short.
Susie, I love it because the universe is pushing you towards something and a fuller expression of who you are. And what I love about this story, and again, if you're listening, think about it this way. What I love about it is Susie's on this journey, which she's trying to figure out how to make money, how to live, survive through the whole thing, like we all are, trying to figure it out, trying to figure out how to be authentic, how to be herself, how to find yourself in the midst of that, which isn't easy, by the way, because it's a lot easier just to sell out, become a shell of yourself, and for $40 an hour. It's a lot easier to do that, frankly. But you're taking a hard path, trying to figure out who you are, trying to figure out how to nudge your client base towards their preferred future, and that's what I really love about the story. And Susie, when you and I first connected, there was just something about who you are, who you want to be. And I get the sense that maybe you're just in this place where maybe you're going to find in the next season a greater expression of who you want to be, because you've been at this a while trying to figure it out, and you're committed to the process, even though it's difficult. And I know that you talked about how you work quite independently, and you don't, I think you said you don't get out much. I think that's what you said, Susie. You don't get out much, but actually, you have this tremendous influence over a lot of people, on people that I connect online. I can see how you're benefiting them and trying to nudge them towards the future. And, my hope actually is that this conversation somehow becomes a nudge to you, that, you go, hey, because you're out there getting a bunch of people on podcasts and doing stuff like that. And, my hope is that maybe this becomes a nudge to you to say, hey, you know what, actually, Susie, this isn't just about nudging others. Maybe it's about, again, nudging you towards where you need to be. And I love the word, and I always love looking at words and what they mean. And, nudge in the dictionary literally means to touch or push gently, but it also means to urge into action, which is an interesting way. But it also means to seek the attention of somebody actually by pushing the elbow towards them, which I find very interesting. It's sort of like, I'm a Canadian, so we're into hockey. So it's sort of like, it's like elbowing somebody towards where they need to go. And, maybe part of this conversation, Susie, gets to be a little bit of elbow in your side to say, hey, Susie, it's not just about others. Maybe it is about you. No, not maybe. It is about you and in the future that you want to find. So here's a question. If people wanted to hunt you down, maybe they want to hire you to do a comedy gig. Maybe they want to get you to be their official mother nudger, not just their mother, which that'd be weird, but their nudger, which I get hung up on saying that because I've been called a motherfucker, but I've never been called a mother nudger. Just to be clear, like I've never been called a mother nudger. But I get the sense that maybe the next season's for you, Susie. Would you be open to that potentially?
Absolutely. As in on Seinfeld terms, it's the summer of Susie or summer of
It's
George.
it's the
Yes,
summer of Susie. I love it. So if it's the summer of Susie, and this podcast will probably air around the beginning of summer, so let's call officially the summer of 25 the summer of Susie. Let's call it the summer of Susie.
love it.
And if it's the summer of Susie and people wanted to find you, Susie, how do they find Susie Moon?
Yeah, I'm on pretty much every social media app there is that are the common ones. But you could go to my website, susiemoon.net, and find me there. Yeah,
Awesome. Listen, Susie, I appreciate your time today. Now, I want to end with this question because it's really always an important question for me. So, this idea of uncommodification for me, again, is living your authentic self for the positive benefit of each other. You've talked about that journey. So Susie walks into a room. Susie walks into some room and is bringing only the thing that Susie can bring. What's Susie doing in that room that is your unique contribution to that ecosystem that brings a positive energy in that area?
I'm bringing the energy. I am making people feel like they belong in that room, that they're comfortable, they're safe, and they're going to have a little fun. I just, it's the energy that when I walk in, I'm bringing it. It's like a
Well,
boombox on my
well,
shoulder.
I love it. And energy is a really important thing. And by the way, I think fun is also very underestimated. I think, life is hard at times. Things are challenging. I mean, we're living in North America and it's halfway through 2025. And some days I wake up and think that the world is fucking ending. I mean, we could be, oh, we're not here tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen. It's not so fun.
Yeah.
But, maybe just getting back to some fun in our lives and taking some joy, finding the power of joy again in our lives for what we want to do, who we want to be is a big part of it. And again, if you listened, I always say you listened for a reason. So if you listened for a reason, ask yourself a couple of questions. One, what's the universe nudging you towards? Two, who do you need to nudge, not nag, but nudge in a positive way towards something that's better for them, more or greater fulfillment of who they are, who they need to be. And again, listen, if you can turn it into your full-time job, that's great. But actually, most of us will be amateur nudgers. And we won't do it for money. We'll just do it for the pleasure of moving another human towards their preferred or maybe even predestined future. So again, thanks for listening in. Susie, thank you for the gift of your time. Absolutely delightful to chat with you. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day. Cheers.